Are the Carolina Panthers ready to contend for an NFC South division title? I'll tell you right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, the part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, because tomorrow is Friday, and on Fridays throughout the offseason, I'm right here answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. What you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council, or at me over on Blue Sky, also at Julian Council, to get your questions in for tomorrow's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. And yesterday on Locked On Panthers, we had a nice little NFC South offseason vibe check as Ross Jackson from Locked On Saints, Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons, and James Yerko from Locked On Bucks came on to tell me what they believe were the biggest free agency moves, biggest draft moves, their biggest concern, and where they believe their teams stand right now in the NFC South. So on today's show, I'm going to do the same for the Panthers. I'm going to tell you the biggest free agency move, my biggest concern, biggest draft move, and where I believe Carolina stands right now on May 29th, going through OTAs, getting closer to training camp, and finally toe meeting leather down there in Jacksonville in September. Going to give you all those perspectives on today's show. So let's start off by looking at free agency back in March and comparing what Ross, what Aaron, and James had to say to what Carolina was able to do. Now, looking at James Yerko from Locked On Bucks, he believes that the Bucks' biggest move was Hassan Reddick, who, if you look at his time, those 4 years, the 1 year, his final year in Arizona, his 1 year in Carolina, and the 2 seasons that he spent in Philadelphia, he was arguably the best edge rusher in the NFL. 50 and a half combined sacks those 4 seasons, which led him to want more money in Philadelphia. The Eagles were unwilling to give the hometown kid more money, so they decided, we're going to trade you to New York, to the Jets. Joe Douglas used to be down there in Philly. He's now back in Philly, by the way, but he wanted him to come to New York to fix their issues. Well, Hassan Reddick wasn't going to play unless he got a new deal. And it took a minute there before he finally got out on the field for the Jets, where he only played in 10 games. And in those 10 games, he had 1 sack. And Joe Douglas, of course, is no longer the general manager up there in New York. Robert Saleh, no longer the head coach for the Jets. And this is one of those big reasons why, because Reddick didn't want to play for them. And when he played, well, it didn't really work out. But if you look at the seasons before, I still think he's one of the better edge rushers in the league. And Tampa got him on a nice little prove-it deal. So that's a good situation. I'm sure plenty of Panther fans would have loved to have never seen Hassan Reddick leave Carolina, and would have loved if he could have come back this offseason. Of course, that's not how it worked out. So I do agree that was a big move for Tampa. Looking at the Saints, buddy, do they have problems getting money back from Derek Carr, who decided to retire? That's what Ross Jackson said was the biggest move the Saints made in free agency. And I can understand it. Carr agreed to forego $30 million guaranteed after he signed a new deal, or at least they reworked his deal this offseason. The Saints are not going to look to get the $10 million back they gave him, which was the roster bonus and all that, which, okay, that's fine. He gets his money, he retires, and then you get more money to try to fix this team. The only problem is, well, the Saints now have Jake Haener. They now have Spencer Rattler. They just drafted 30-damn-year-old Tyler Shuck out of Louisville. Okay, we'll see how it goes. So the Saints, not great free agency for them. And in Atlanta, I honestly just felt so bad talking to Aaron yesterday, because he just sounds downtrodden, beaten down because of, well, covering the Atlanta Falcons. And I can understand at points in times, because I felt the same way covering these Carolina Panthers. 19-59, by the way, since I've been doing this podcast the last couple of years. But there is hope, at least in Carolina or in Atlanta. Yeah, there's hope because Michael Penix Jr., I think Raheem Morris is a good enough head coach. But man, it's just the Falcons of it all. And the biggest move they made apparently was signing Divine Diablo, which, okay, that's the best Atlanta could do. So outside of Tampa, and getting Reddick, I'm not impressed by anything that Ross and Aaron told me about what went on in New Orleans and Atlanta, respectively, this offseason. Now, as far as what I believe was the biggest free agency move the Panthers made, it was actually a move that they decided to not make, and that was not signing Milton Williams, where there was reports coming out that the Panthers were set to sign him, and it was a huge move for Carolina, for a guy who was outstanding in the Super Bowl and in the playoffs, that whole run for Philadelphia, but someone who had not played a ton of snaps as far as just percentage throughout a season. Good player, but was he worth what New England ended up signing him to, which was 4 years, $104 million. And by the way, $26 million per year is more than what Derek Brown is making. So I don't know how Carolina could have justified spending that much money on a player who's never been a Pro Bowler, who's never played like even close to the amount of snaps in a single season that Derek Brown has played, how they could justify giving up that much money. And again, it would have been a big move, and a lot of Panther fans were excited about it, and of course, rightfully bummed when it did not work out. But I believe it's the best move that they did not make, even if it was Williams and his agent playing Carolina. It's the best move they didn't make because they ended up getting 3 players for the price of 1. They signed Patrick Jones II to a 2-year deal worth $15 million, up to $20 million in incentives. They signed Bobby Brown III to a 3-year, $21 million deal, up to $27 million in incentives. They signed Turk Wharton from Kansas City to a 3-year, $54 million max deal with $30 million guaranteed. So if you look at it, just to do the 2 defensive tackles, the interior guys, Bobby Brown III and Turk Wharton, they ended up spending a maximum of $81 million on those 2 players, saving them $23 million based on the $104 million deal that Milton Williams signed with New England. So that saves them $35 million if Brown and Wharton don't hit their incentives. Add in Pat Jones II to all of that, the deal, they spent a maximum of $101 million on those 3 guys and a minimum of 81. So they could save between $3 to $23 million by missing out on Milton Williams. And, you know, $3 million is not that big of a saving, but it's not really the amount of money that they saved. It's the fact that they got 3 players for the price of 1. And that one, while brings like an elite trade as far as an interior pass rusher, you have to wonder, like, did you need him anyways? Because you look at it, pressures. Okay, comparing Milton Williams to Bobby Brown III. Williams had 40, where Bobby Brown had 3 last year. But you look at A'Shawn Robinson and Derek Brown the last couple of seasons when they've been healthy. A'Shawn Robinson had the most pressures among interior defensive linemen in Carolina last year, 24. You got to Derek Brown in 2023 and 2022. He had 41 and 40 respectively. So you already have a guy who may not be a noted interior pass rusher, but is a Pro Bowler, will play 90% of the snaps if need be, which is not anything Milton Williams has done. I'm not trying to sit here and denigrate Milton Williams. He's an excellent player. I just think that would have been a massive overpay. And considering what they were able to bring in, and we certainly need to see what he does in New England and what Turk and Bobby and Patrick do here in Carolina. But just as far as sticking to the plan, and Brant Tillis talked about this, executing what they wanted to do and not to just be a little bit crazy and overreach what I think David Tepper probably would have wanted them to do in the past. Like, that's good business for Carolina. So to me, really smart move. And you look at just the run defense, that was a big issue last year. You want guys from the interior, obviously, to be able to rush the passer, but like, you need the edge guys to do that. And you look at the run defense last year, which was hellacious. Bobby Brown III, his run defense grade 65.7. Milton Williams, it's a 41. So he's not a great run stopper. He had 4 times last year we had grades in the 20s. The Panthers don't need any more of that after what they had dealt with the last couple of seasons, especially last year. So missing out on Milton Williams, deciding to not meet his total, whatever it was, it ended up with Patrick Jones II, Bobby Brown III, and Turk Wharton, and the Panthers saving money, but also getting 3 players for the price of 1 and staying to the principles that they've set here now that Dan Morgan, Brant Tillis, and Dave Canales are this holy triumvirate of the brain trust in Carolina. Not to, I guess, oversell it there, but those are the 3 guys that they have now running things in this organization. So to me, like, that's big, and what it led to, far more impressive than what New Orleans did, what Atlanta did, and, you know, Tampa. I like it, but I like what Carolina did a lot more. Maybe I'm biased. Maybe I'm not. What about the draft? And what about the biggest concern? I'll tell you that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big, and the Knicks have their backs against the wall right now in the Eastern Conference Finals. And if you're still a believer in Jalen Brunson and the Knicks' ability to come back, why not back it up with the same game parlay? New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Right back here on Locked On Panthers. Yesterday had a nice little NFC South vibe check. Asked James Yarko, Aaron Freeman, and Ross Jackson of Locked On Bucks, Locked On Falcons, and Locked On Saints, respectively, what they felt like was the best draft move and their biggest concern. I'm going to tell you now, my belief for the best draft move Carolina made and my biggest concern for the Carolina Panthers at this point in time in the offseason. Looking back at what they said, James said about Tampa that Benjamin Morrison, the second-round pick from Notre Dame, that corner was the best move that they made. And you look at it, heading into last season, he was considered a first-round talent. Now, he did have a hip injury that cost him the rest of the season there as Notre Dame went on a nice little run to the national title before losing to the Ohio State University. He would have been a key piece of that. Unfortunately, was not there. And I do think he's talented, but you have to wonder, coming off of a significant injury and coming in, can he make that immediate impact that Tampa wants? It's typically, at least in my opinion, the year after coming back. So you come back, and then the year after that, that's the year where I really feel like a player is back to their old selves. I don't know, especially taking the leap up to the NFL level, having missed the amount of time rehabbing, even if he's out there right now. I'm not believing that Benjamin Morrison is going to be an impact player for Tampa right away, but certainly down the line. So that could be a good pick for them. New Orleans, they took Kelvin Banks, 9th overall, right behind Carolina. Smart move. They've had issues there with Trevor Penning. Of course, Ryan Ramchik's no longer there. Teron Armstead's no longer there. And it's how quickly can you go from having two solid tackles to not really knowing whether you believe in Talius Fiaga, who they got last year from Oregon State, or believing in Trevor Penning, who has not panned out as a first-round pick from Northern Iowa. And thankfully, Carolina did not go after him, as that was a guy that I had seen mocks back then thinking Carolina should go for. The Panthers instead, they now have Vicky Ekwonu. They still have Taylor Moton. Better situation than what New Orleans has. And Kelvin Banks was, to me, looking at tackles last year, whether it was Armand Mimbu at Mizzou or it was Will Campbell at LSU, like he may be the best of those guys, even if he went third behind them. He's a good player. Now, the one thing to think about, we talked about this, Jalen Walker, Mykel Williams. Why were people hyping up Jalen Walker and Mykel Williams? Well, it's because of the game back there in Austin, Texas in October. And what happened on that hot Austin evening? It was Kelvin Banks in the Texas offensive line getting the ass kicked by Jalen Walker, Mykel Williams, and them dogs. So we'll see if he can get ready to go in the NFL. And there's plenty of talent he played last year. I don't think Texas played the most difficult schedule in the SEC a year ago, but he still is exactly what you want in an offensive tackle. Get good NFL coaching. They'll figure it out. I don't think Kelvin Banks is going to be some sort of liability. Just something I want to point out there. And speaking of Jalen Walker, he is now in Atlanta, along with James Pierce Jr., two Charlotte area natives, Walker from Salisbury, Pierce from right here in the city. They're both now in Atlanta, and Aaron Freeman believes that those are the biggest moves that they made. And I kind of agree, especially after talking to Aaron and having viewed the Falcons' lack thereof a pass rush in recent years, the last 20 years, basically, is what he said. Going after two guys in the first round, I will never begrudge a team for wanting to get edge rushers, knowing how premium of a position that is in the NFL and how they can win games. Like IMD lines win. Interior, I guess exterior, but the edge, those guys win you ball games. Get after the quarterback, stop the run. That's how you win in football, period, especially at the NFL level. So I do love those moves. I'm wondering, I'm sure a lot of you are, how that's going to play out, because Jalen Walker, we talked about him ad nauseum on this podcast. And that's one thing about the draft where it's like we spend so much wasted breath on guys who are never going to play in Carolina. And we wasted so much time and energy and breath on Jalen Walker, who's now in Atlanta. But we'll still talk about him because he's in Atlanta and Carolina. They just looked at their board. he was up there, and he decided that they like Tet McMillan more than Jalen Walker. So we'll see how he plays and how James Pierce pans out as well as the Charlotte area guy. Had Carolina maybe traded back, he could have made sense for them. So I do like what Atlanta did by getting those two players, but I really do appreciate what Carolina did. My best move that I think they made in the draft was drafting Tetairoa McMillan 8th overall. Y'all heard me leading up to the draft and even in free agency say that they got to get a true number one receiver. I don't believe Xavier Legette is that. I don't think Adam Thielen obviously is going to be that. I looked at the market. I wasn't really that excited about a lot of the older guys like Keenan Allen and Stephon Diggs. Yikes. I wanted them to get somebody, but it felt like it had to be in the draft. And in the draft, there weren't a ton of options, but clearly the option was Tetairoa McMillan, T-Mac. And I did not expect him to be someone Carolina was going to be targeting there at 8. I was surprised because not just it was him, but that they had passed up on the guy who seemed to be just tailor-made for what this organization is trying to be. Now, he may not be tailor-made for the scheme, which may not last past the upcoming 17 games this fall. Hopefully more games than that. But I did not see that one happening, as you guys have known, because I've said this plenty of times, but I love it because I thought they needed a top wide receiver. And Tetairoa McMillan, when you look at the numbers he put up at Arizona, you compare them to the 3 guys who were in the top 10 last year, and Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr., he's on that level. That's the kind of production that you get from him, hopefully. That's what you got from him in college, and hopefully he'll do what those guys did last year as rookies. I see it in him. So I love that move, and they did not really do anything other than make sure everybody from the offensive line came back. And even had they lost Christensen or lost one of Corbett or Mays, still would have been in a good spot this upcoming season. Maybe not the kind of depth, but they would have been in a good spot. I like that they brought in Rico Dowdle. I do. But I needed them to get a true difference maker potentially on offense, and that's what Tetairoa McMillan can be as a wide receiver 1. So I love that they invested in their quarterback, who showed them after they brought him back in there reluctantly that, hey, maybe he can be that guy for you. So I thought that was clearly the best move. There's a good argument, though. Maybe it's not as clear, but there is a good argument for Nick Scorton, considering that, much like Benjamin Morrison, he went the year last year as a consensus, or at least a guy who's considered to be a first-round type of talent, did not play out that way, even though like his sack numbers weren't the same, but he still had plenty of TFLs, was first-team All-SEC edge rusher in his lone season there in the SEC at A&M, and you got him in the second round. So, and he's healthy. I love that move, but I love the one about Tet McMillan, or T-Mac, however he wants to go, more than that. Biggest concern. James Yarko pointed this out when he talked about just some of the moves that they had to make in the offseason, and he said how he loved they got Hassan Reddick, who technically would be an outside linebacker, but he believes that linebacker is a concern for Tampa Bay. New Orleans, it's pretty obvious that quarterback's a concern, as you have Jake Haener now, you have Spencer Rattler, and the rookie Tyler Shuck battling for that job, a true open quarterback competition down there in New Orleans. I would probably lean Shuck just because they've seen what Haener and what Rattler can and most certainly cannot do so far. So we'll see how that plays out. But he also did bring up the coaching staff. Kellen Moore, like it took a while for anybody to actually want to hire him. He seemed like a hot name a couple of years ago. I think he interviewed here in Carolina a couple of times, and then he gets this job in New Orleans kind of like by default because no one wanted the job, much like here last year. But I think the guy Carolina hired last year may be the right guy. And this could be the same thing for New Orleans, but it's a big concern because you just don't really know. And then for Atlanta, and Aaron said it's like complacency. Really, his biggest concern is just the entire history of the Atlanta Falcons, a team that blew a 28-3 lead, a team that brought in Kirk Cousins and then benched Kirk Cousins and now has Kirk Cousins not showing up to work because he's mad. Yeah, so it's the whole Falcons of it all. That's his biggest concern. And I get it, and I laugh because it's hilarious. As far as Carolina, my biggest concern for the Panthers is still the defense. Like, has it improved enough? I have felt like the talent level has not been there in recent years. I also feel like the injuries have hurt them. Now, injuries, that is a reason and an excuse. But the talent, I don't really think you can question that it's not been there. Now, looking at it right now, I like the moves that they made by bringing in Turk Wharton, maybe an overpay, depending on how you look at it. Certainly from the Kansas City perspective, we got from Chris Clark, there's some eyebrow raising there in KC. Bobby Brown III, I really like that move because they needed to bring somebody else in who could be a run stopper with him and Derek Brown and Deshaun Robinson. A good little trio there. They brought in Cam Jackson via the draft from Florida. Also, nice addition. We can see what Jaden Crumley is able to do also in that interior. So I like where they're at interior defensive line-wise when you have a Pro Bowler, one of the best defensive tackles in football, and then you add some talent around him. Edge, like we'll see. I like Nick Scorton. I like Prince Emmanuel. They've never played in the NFL, and I'm not going to sit here and crown them. I think Scorton of the two should be the one that ends up actually being a true impact for the Carolina Panthers this upcoming season, and it'll need to be long-term. Well, I don't know, man. I don't know. We will have to wait and see. Linebacker, I'm asking a lot of questions there. Corner, not a ton of questions other than, can JC continue to stay healthy? And then what's your depth like outside? And even there at the nickel spot, that at safety, they got to get another guy to start. So I just don't think they're there yet as far as the amount of bodies. It's May 29th. They don't have to be there yet. But by the time they get to Jacksonville, you'd want them to be there, and maybe even later on in the season, that's when they finally get there. So that's my biggest concern. Like Ejiro Evero, I know plenty of y'all, do not want him to be the DC in Carolina. And he has coordinated two hellacious defenses. And I have sat here and I have given the reasons why he's still here. And I've also given the case against. So I'm cool with it, I suppose. But yeah, he's left a lot to be desired. And the players on the field have also left a lot to be desired. And Dave Canales basically told you that all last season when he said it's not the scheme. And if it's not the scheme, then it's the players. So we'll see. I can't sit here and be sold on this defense. I got to see it first. So with all that being said, where do the Carolina Panthers stand in NFC South right now? Are they ready to contend for a division title? I'll tell you right here on Locked On Panthers. So are the Carolina Panthers ready to win the NFC South for the first time in a decade? God, how has it been that long? It wasn't that long ago when me and my boys were up there at RIP, the Epicenter. I guess they call it like Queen City Quarters now or whatever the hell, back when they were having a nice little bar crawl. It was celebrating back-to-back division titles. I miss that. I miss those days. And I'm hoping that the Panthers can get back to that starting this fall, because you got to win one before you can win two, before you can win three in a row, and maybe four in a row. Of course, let's not get ahead of ourselves. They need to go out there, get a win week one in Jacksonville and withstand the first 4 weeks they're on the road, 3 out of the first 4. But looking at the moves that they made so far, my free agency, defensively, I feel like they went out there and they added what they needed to add. So thus far, they need to get another safety, maybe an experienced corner behind Mike and JC, but really got to get a safety. And after that, you can't really complain about what they did or did not do offensively. All the offensive lines back. They brought in some talented young receivers. They brought in an experienced receiver in Hunter Renfrow, tight end with Tommy Trumbull being injured and out for the beginning of the season. Like, that's a concern again, just because you have two young guys in JT Sanders and then bringing in Mitchell Evans, who I do like. So that to add to there, but overall, I think the roster, decent spot. Like, you can question depth at certain spots, and that's kind of been what's separated this team from others, because they have not had great injury luck, and they do have good injury luck this upcoming fall, and that's kind of the case any year. They can withstand. Like, I don't know if they can withstand the kind of haymakers the Lions took last year, and still Detroit found the way to be the number 1 seed. Yeah, they may have lost in the divisional round because the injuries eventually caught up to them, but they still were able to win football games. And if that happened to Carolina, as we've seen, like, they would just completely tank. So they might not be there depth-wise. We'll wait and have to see if that is the case. But just looking at the rest of the division, New Orleans sucks. Sorry, I shouldn't say that, but man, that is not going to be a good football team. I don't see how anyway, unless Spencer Rattler finally plays to that level, which we have been waiting for since he was at Oklahoma and before he got benched in favor of Caleb Williams in that Red River rivalry in Dallas at the old Cotton Bowl. We haven't seen him. He played well his last year at South Carolina, throwing to Leggett, but he hasn't been that guy. Jake Hanner, hilarious photos, but come on, let's be serious. And Tyler Shuck, I said it yesterday. I was living in Bristol, Connecticut, working at ESPN when he had committed to Larry Fedora in Chapel Hill. I left there in 2018. It's 2025. That's how long this man has been in college. Wasn't that good at Oregon. They blamed him for not winning the Pac-12 championship that one year. I think it was like the COVID year. He got hurt multiple times there at Texas Tech, got to Louisville, played well, but I don't really get it. I don't see it. Okay, New Orleans is not going to be a good football team. It's just not going to happen. Not going to happen. Atlanta, Aaron, I appreciate him keeping it real. I think too many people that I bring on here from the network and, respect everybody who works here, but I think too many people are just fanboy homers a lot of times. And Aaron wasn't going to do that for me. And neither was Ross. Like, I don't think a lot of guys, some of the people I talk to are not going to do that. Some people certainly are. You can tell who they are, and that's not who I am. And I don't believe that's a disservice to your audience. But Aaron just does not seem to be feeling Atlanta at all. And if he's not feeling them, I'm not feeling the Falcons. I like Michael Penix Jr. You know what? Damn it. I love Michael Penix Jr. And I hope he plays well and has a long career, except for every time he plays against the Panthers. Like, that's all I can say. Because I can't root against that guy. I can't. After everything he's went through, I can't. Hell, I was living in damn Tennessee when he committed to the Vols and then decommitted. That's how long. I'm getting old, man. But yeah, Falcons, they're not a problem. So the only team really standing Carolina's way is Tampa. In Tampa, like, they're good. Chris Godwin, if you heard what Todd Bowles said the other day, he's not back yet. And they don't know when he's going to be back. So that's a concern. They still have Mike Evans. Baker has looked good. He's the Baker that Carolina hoped they were trading for. Maybe had they gotten him back on draft night in 2022 instead of waiting until July, maybe things will work out better for Baker Mayfield. Also, not having the stupid quarterback competition with Sam, who's shown he couldn't play in Carolina. Now things have worked out for both of them. Funny how that goes. I just don't look at the Bucs like James thinks the Bucs are a team that is going to be winning the NFC South yet again and can compete with the best in the NFC. I don't know where he's getting that from. That's great. Sure, you have one team in New Orleans fighting against the Titans for the number one pick. Atlanta, they believe they're fighting Carolina for second place in the NFC South. For me, like Carolina, they're gunning for Tampa Bay. They got to prove it on the field, but if they come out the way I think they're potentially capable of coming out and get off to a good start and withstand that 5-week stretch where they got some pretty damn good teams, those last 2 or 3 games in the season, Tampa, Seattle, Tampa, that could have decided the division right then and there. So, yeah, I think they're fighting with Atlanta for second place. I think they should be above Atlanta. But they're also gunning for that wild card spot if they don't get the NFC South title. Now, I think at least 8 wins, just depending on how things play out, maybe, just maybe, in this division of all divisions, there's an opportunity there. So I see 2 easy. I mean, everything is never easy. It's the NFL. It's hard to win, but 2 wins against New Orleans, at least 1 against Atlanta. And then you're going to have to take maybe both, if not one of them, against Tampa Bay to win this division. And, of course, plenty of other games throughout the rest of the season. It was other 11. So, yeah, they're fighting Atlanta for second place, but really they're above Atlanta. And they're gunning for that wild card spot and quite possibly the NFC South division title. That's the vibes for me looking at the Carolina Panthers right now at the end of May. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free right here on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky. As tomorrow, I'm back answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. All you got to do is at me or DM me on Twitter or at me over on Blue Sky to get those questions into me right now. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Friday.